A style of drawing that I really enjoy is circulism, and it's something that I've come back to a number of times over the years. This is one example that I did many years ago, and this is just a copy of it. I think the original is probably on the other side of the world. But you can see how we built up colors using little circles on top of circles, different colors, using more pressure to get more saturated colors and less pressure to get less saturated colors. And when you step back, I mean, it's a little bit like Impressionism in that when you're up close to it, you get lost in all of this tangle of circles. But as you get away from it a little bit, everything kind of evens out and almost gives it sort of a dreamy sort of look that I really enjoy. So this is one example of one that I did a long time ago. This is another one similar in feel. This time I used very, very small circles. I really like the sort of feel that this gives. It's soft, it's comfortable, kind of dreamy. And you can really see how the background can influence the sort of feel that you get on the foreground. And that's because even though there's a bunch of little circles here, you can still see usually the background through it. And so that will give it its own depth and feel as well. If you get really, really small with the circles, you can barely see them. And so this is one, and the circles are so small that it almost looks like just regular shading. I'm not going to go through a full tutorial on how to shade a sphere, although I'll talk a little bit about it. But I think it's a good place to start. I think we'll work on doing something in black and white, because this is a really good way of getting a feel for how we can change things and make things work over time using circulism. So right now I am going to put down a basic tone here in graphite. I would do whatever feels comfortable to you as far as pressure and size of circle. And then you can adjust that as you go along, and you'll see what needs to be done. So I've gone over this with a simple shade, which might be, it's probably something close to being the local color of the sphere. So in other words, the actual color of the sphere. Some of it is getting washed out because of a highlight, so I didn't do anything there. Again, and this isn't going to be a tutorial on how to shade a sphere exactly, but I'll talk about some of those areas. So next I'm going to start shading in the area that receives no light. So if the light source is coming through here, you know, our terminator line is going to be somewhere around here, and we'll just kind of mark it off a little bit. So if you're not familiar with some of these terms like terminator line and core shadow and highlights and all that sort of stuff, I would really encourage taking a look at some of the videos on YouTube or books. I mean, there is a lot of information out there. And shading is actually a little bit more complicated than I thought it was when I first looked into it. You know, I thought, well, where the light source hits it, it's going to be lighter, and where it doesn't hit it, it's going to be darker. And that is essentially true. But to have realistic shadows, it takes a little bit more knowledge. And this isn't going to be necessary for everybody. It can get kind of advanced. But if you're doing, realism, it is something that you would probably want to explore a little bit more closely to learn how this stuff all works. And you know, I'm not doing this exact. You know, normally I would kind of mark all my lines if I wanted to be a little bit more exact. But I'm trying to do this intuitively, which is one of the reasons I like doing circulism. So what I'm doing is I'm going to mark this. I think I marked the terminator line a little bit too high, and I'm going to put that a little bit lower. So again, the terminator line is like if the sun or the light source is coming this way, the line that marks the area that receives direct light and doesn't receive any direct light is that terminator line. And I guess it's, at least to me, it was not intuitive that the terminator line is usually the darkest area of the shadow, because the rest of it, normally this is going to be, you know, a sphere is going to be in a space, there's an ambient color and light, and that ends up reflecting on parts of the shadow, particularly where you get a reflection off a close surface. So, you know, my guess is right here is going to be fairly light in comparison to most of the dark area. So it's just something to look into. I find this stuff fascinating. You know, a lot of people kind of don't like to get into the weeds with all this technical stuff, but I find it kind of interesting. So I'm going to just start darkening this area here. This area doesn't receive any direct light from the light source, so the lightest darks here are still going to be darker than the darkest lights on this side. That's a jumble of words, but basically nothing on this side is going to be lighter than what's up here. If you just have the one light source. Obviously, if you have multiple light sources, that can change, but we're just assuming one single light source. And you can see that I'm developing this pretty slowly. If I were going to do my regular just kind of shading, hatching kind of thing, this would go a lot quicker probably. But I like the inexactness of the strokes here, and having it reveal something pretty exact, really. I mean, this is starting to look like a sphere, and there is not one line in here delineating it, you know, or making it into this sort of shape. It's just a series of little circles that's making a big circle, big sphere. And I could draw the cast shadow here, but I don't really want to make this any longer than it needs to be. So I keep on kind of standing back and squinting a little bit and seeing what it looks like, and then I can see, oh, okay, this area needs a little bit more, and you know, this is, you know, none of this is exact, again, and it's not meant to be. So we can kind of get an idea of how this is going to take shape here. And we're seeing something that is definitely three-dimensional now. We have a light side and a dark side, and you know, we've even included some of the reflected light here in the bottom, and you know, we kind of snuck up on it. We didn't you know, we didn't just shade right up to it. We kind of built it up, and that's kind of how the circulism works, at least for me. So this is using black and white. If you wanted to, I don't know how this is going to look on this without doing a whole big thing, but you could use some white since this is a toned paper. And if you wanted to work on this hot spot, actually the hot spot isn't necessarily where the highlight is, but let's just do that. And I don't want to shade the whole circle, but we can start to see how this will work if we're using multiple colors. So let's look at using color to do the same sort of thing. As a demonstration of color mixing that is similar to circulism or pointillism, I'm going to be using these little dots here. And these are close to primary colors plus black. And I'm going to intentionally blur this, so I'm going to take it away from the camera a bit. Intentionally blurring these will give us a better feel for the effect that we're going for in circulism. When we mix these together, so we have some blue. If we have it spaced out a lot, and you will see a lot more of the background, a lot of the white, we have a less intense blue. If we bring them together, again, we have a more saturated blue. So if we wanted to move away from blue and get a little bit warmer, maybe a little bit towards a purple, if we added some of the red or pink. Now from a distance, we can start to see that this is looking more like a purple. You can see that we're starting to get a different color because we're mixing the blue and the red. The same would be true with yellow. Now if we added blue to that, we would expect to get something closer to a green. So again, from a distance, we can kind of see how this would kind of translate to a green in our eyes. And the same would be true then of yellow and red, and we would expect that this would give us something that would be closer to an orange. And this is basically the same thing as we see in offset printing, the old Sunday comics. You can see here how we have green up in the corner, and really it's just a combination of the cyan, yellow, and a bit of magenta. As a more real-world example, I took these dots and I brought them into Photoshop, and I'm taking the average color of each group, and starting with just that blue, yellow, and pink or red, and we're getting an orange, a purple, a green, and some grays. So this is kind of how our eyes perceive it from a little bit of a distance. How about we try one together? I have a picture here, a very simple composition of a little, I guess it looks like a caterpillar. Actually, I took this picture when I was visiting northern Minnesota up in the Grand Portage, just a stone's throw from the Canadian border. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. I've sped this up quite a bit just so this video isn't too long. But you'll see that I have laid down a basic color for the caterpillar, which was kind of the yellowish green. And you could start really with any color. I find it's easier to have a base color that kind of goes with the image that I'm drawing. I think it's easier to make adjustments if I have a color that's basically right, but needs some help in some areas. So you can see that, I added some some like turquoise blue towards the bottom. And right now what I'm doing is adding some of the darker areas. This will help it to give it some form, and I don't have to finish it all. I'm just kind of laying stuff out. Again, this process for me is pretty intuitive. I'm not planning things out a lot. I'm just kind of feeling it out as I go and seeing if what I'm doing is working or if it's not. If it's not working, I'll stop and I'll just try to make an adjustment. So for instance, you saw me just using pink on the gravel there. And the gravel, of course, isn't pink. It looks mostly gray. But by using pink, this will give an opportunity to use some other colors, which will kind of give that gray a more interesting look. Instead of just using, like a Payne's gray or something, I'll use a combination of, the pinks and blues and probably some yellows or greens just to kind of even it out. I find that this gives it a more deep, rich look to the color. And this is just a personal preference. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. But I find that it gives me the sort of effect that I like in the end. So here I'm using some toned paper. This will allow me to use white, which you can see I've done there kind of on the horizon line. That's one nice thing about using a paper that's maybe neutral as opposed to being just white or black. You can go both ways. You can go darker and you can go lighter. And I find that's helpful a lot of times. Again, not necessary, but something that you can give a try. And I think there's a number of reasons why you might want to give this technique a try. I found it pretty helpful. Some of the things that you might discover is that it might help you to focus on the overall feel of your drawing as opposed to getting bogged down with all the details. Because with this technique, you really can't do the details, not in a very fine way at any rate. Another thing is that it can help us to find some different or interesting ways of mixing color. For me, it really helped me to introduce a larger array of different hues and mixing them together in the final image, which can give something a kind of a painterly quality to it. I think that it can be a really interesting way of making simple colors have a little bit more depth and feeling. And you may just enjoy the slow process of this. It kind of slows you down a bit, and you might find yourself being a little bit more intuitive about how you complete your image. Be a little bit like sailing upwind, where you are tacking back and forth, not going directly towards the goal, but you're making minor adjustments as you go, and you finally get to your destination. So we can see that this little caterpillar is coming to life here. He has a lot of different colors that kind of make up his overall colorful tone, and the same with the pavement here. It's not an exact representation, but I think it's an interesting way of interpreting this little scene. I would love to know if you give this a try or something like it. Let me know in the comments, or send me a message somehow. Let me know how it goes. I'm really interested and always fascinated with what other people are doing. So let me know, and hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'll have some other ones similar to this at another time. I'm going to provide a link to a Circulism portrait here at the end of this video. And thank you to everyone for checking out this video. Very much appreciate it. And hopefully you'll find some other videos on the site that you will enjoy as well. Consider clicking subscribe here, and until next time, we'll see you later.